here we have Katrina. We have Katrina Pavetto. She is our Vice President of Compliance, and she is amazing. She will be doing a good chunk of this presentation. So get ready to hear her voice for most of it. All right, so a quick disclaimer, Peabody Properties does not discriminate in the selection of applicants on the basis of race, color, national origin, disability, age, ancestry, children, familial status, genetic information, marital status, public assistance recipiency, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, veteran or military status, or any other basis prohibited by law. Persons with disabilities are entitled to request a reasonable accommodation in rules, policies, practices, or services, or to request a reasonable modification in the housing when such accommodations or modifications may be necessary to afford persons with disabilities an equal opportunity to use and enjoy the house. So now we're just going to do a quick overview of the residents at St. James. And we're going to discuss a little bit about the community, the timeline. So what this will go over will be the, application process, when it's open, when the lottery is going to start, possibly when people will be moving in. We're going to discuss the lottery process and also the interview process and eligibility requirements. We will have an area for questions at the end. Okay.
We're going to make that bigger. Give some stuff on the side.
Sure. Are we able to make the presentation bigger? Let's see.
If we get rid of that.
Let me get rid of this side.
I don't know how to get rid of. Any better? Yeah. Oh, much better. That's what we like to hear. Much better. Okay.
Thank you for pointing that out. All right, and if there are any questions, we will have an area at the very end. If you are on the Zoom, please feel free to put your questions in the chat or come off mute. If you are here with us in person, ask us the questions. We'll do our best to answer everything that you have. All right. Go on to the next slide, please. Perfect. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the owners and the developers. So the North Shore Community Development Coalition's mission is to invest in the neighborhoods to create a thriving communities through creating affordable housing, community building, and public art. And the North Shore CDC was founded in 2011. They are headquartered here in Salem, which is really nice, very local. So they understand the community and the needs of it. And they have developed approximately 475 affordable apartments in the North Shore. Next, we're going to talk about the management company, Peabody Properties, which Katrina and I work for. So Peabody Properties has about 50 years in experience. What that just means, we know multifamily housing. We know what our residents are looking for, what the community is looking for. We have about 14,000 plus apartments out there, which does make us one of the largest property management companies in the Eastern United States. We do offer a large amount of services. We have apartments that we manage, condominiums, senior elderly housing. We also have veteran housing, and we are very big on working with our clients, with our residents, to make sure that all of the apartments are treated as if they were our own home. So that is always our main goal, just to make sure that we are putting that home in housing and that everybody is happy where they're living. Okay. And now I'm going to pass it off to Katrina so she can give you the fun information that everybody's here for.
I get to be the fun. Thank you so much. So I'm going to talk about St. James and the lottery process and the eligibility, and then she gets that. So there's that. St. James is located right here, so kitty corner from this parking lot. You can actually see it through the windows at 160 Federal Street. If you aren't familiar with the area, I recommend you take a drive down Federal Street. It's beautiful. Not far from the guy who puts out tons of skeletons and skulls on Halloween, if you know who I'm talking about. Right? Okay, so anyways, that's the property. It's 32 apartment homes, and it's a mix of studio units, 1-bedroom apartments, and 2-bedroom apartments. It was a school that is being converted through adaptive reuse into an apartment community. So it is retaining some of the beautiful features that you know about those old schools that were built and have been in our communities for a really long time. St. James does have an age restriction in place for all of its residents, and we will go over that in a little bit more detail later on, as well as an income restriction. We will also go over that, and we have collateral and materials up here that also describe those. All right, so next, thank you, Megan. So about the community and the location. Let me tell you, this is a beautiful location for a property, and we're going to get into some of the community amenities, but you are steps away from this beautiful, we all around here call it senior center, right? But I'll tell you, my 13-year-old came to the Boston class. This is huge. I was just here a few weeks ago for our boat walk, right? So it's a beautiful location, located right here near the community center, right across Bridge Street from Lebanese Retreat Park, where there is a dog park and the beautiful bridges over the canal, and right on the edge of downtown Salem, with access to all the beautiful shopping and the restaurants and all the amenities that living in Salem brings with it.
Katrina,
Also, right up the corner is, yes.
sorry to interrupt here. We're having a hard time understanding you. It's coming in and out. Is there any way you could speak a little bit closer to the speaker for Zoom?
How about if I stand over here?
That sounds perfect.
Better? Okay. All right. My apologies. So St. James is in a fabulous location here in Salem, to sum up that slide. Next slide, Megan.
Sure.
Okay, so the apartment mix, because we do get this question a lot, is what is the actual breakdown of the units or the mix of apartments at the community? So as I mentioned, it's a mix of studio apartments, 1-bedroom apartments, and 2-bedroom apartments. That's right. And it is a total of 4 floors. There's a garden level and then 3 floors above it. And there's a total of 11 studio homes, 19 1-bedrooms, and 2 2-bedrooms. Mixed in with that, we do also have apartments that have mobility accessibility. So if you need lowered cabinets or bigger spaces in the restrooms to accommodate mobility accessibility needs, we do have 3 of those, as well as 1 that has sensory accessibility. So for persons who are visually impaired and perhaps need a strobe light with their smoke alarms and things like that, we have 1 of those units as well. Okay, let's talk about the community amenities, and you see, if you can make it out, it's a pretty exhaustive list that the developer has come up with. It's a beautiful building. That will have a community room along with an outside patio. There will be both on-site laundry and on-site off-street parking. So 1 parking space per household. And if you live in Salem, you know off-street parking is coveted, especially come fall, right? It's steps away from the senior center, again, right near the dog park. It has secure access and automated entry doors. All of the common areas will be mobility accessible to be compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. There is elevator access and a ramp to get into the building. We will have professional on-site management with 24-hour maintenance available, and it is a smoke-free community. Some of the apartment amenities, heat and hot water is included. Heat, that's kicker, right? Modern kitchens with quartz countertops. They are going to be beautiful, and stainless steel appliances, including microwaves. Hardwood floors in many of the units, those beautiful, large, oversized windows that you associate with an old renovated school, right? And every unit will be high-speed internet and cable ready. Hard to make out, but then what you see on there is a rendering of what one of the 1-bedroom floor plans will look like. And this slide here shows us visually some drawings of what the apartments will look like. Obviously, the building is still under construction, so we don't have real pictures yet, but these are just artist renderings of what these apartments are going to look like once they're finished. Megan, you can hear me okay still?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right, so I mentioned before that this property does have income restrictions, and I'm going to explain this. We're probably gonna spend a little bit of time on this because it can get a little complicated. So we'll start with what the rents are. for some of the units. So we have the studio apartments are $1,610. In order to qualify for a studio apartment at that rate, you must be making at least $48,300. So that's what's called, we call that the minimum income. That's the minimum amount of annual income necessary to afford the rent. There's also a maximum income, and that amount is based on how many people will be living in the apartment. So if it's just you moving into a studio apartment, you need to make at least $48,300, but you can't make more than $69,480. Okay, so there's a window of eligibility. For our one-bedroom apartments, the one-bedroom apartments are going for $1,725. And the minimum income for a one-bedroom apartment would be $51,750. And again, the maximum is based on how many people will be living in the apartment. So if it's just you and you wish to move into a one-bedroom apartment, the maximum would be that $69,480 that we described. If it's two people, you and somebody else is sharing the apartment, it would be $79,440. If it's three people, $89,340, and four people, $99,240. Good question. They vary, right? I wouldn't say that is there a consistent square footage? Well, look at that.
Katrina, we didn't hear the question.
Sorry, the question coming in is how many square feet are the bedrooms or are the apartments? I'm sorry. So the cell sheet tells us that the studio apartments are approximately 450 square feet. The one bedrooms are approximately 649 square feet, and the two bedrooms are approximately 806 square feet. And you can stop me at any time that I am wrong. Sometimes the adaptive reuse of buildings makes us sort of wedge apartments into places, right? Because the old buildings aren't necessarily square. They're not necessarily meant to be apartment buildings. So we say this is the rough idea, plus or minus. There might be a little bit of a delta in there. Is that fair? Good question.
Wages, social security, pension, that's pretty high as income. What about interest income, dividends, distributions, that total?
Good question, and we're going to get to a review of income in a little while. Is that okay? Can we just put a pin in that and we'll come back to it? Okay. All right, so going back to the two-bedroom apartments, those are renting for $2,070. In addition to those rents, we do have 8 apartment homes at St. James that have project-based subsidy attached to them. So what that means is your rent, if you are selected for one of those apartments through the qualification process, would be based on what your actual income is. And the balance of rent for that apartment would be paid by the subsidizing agency or whoever holds that project-based subsidy. So for those units, or if you are coming into the property with your own mobile housing choice voucher, there is no minimum income requirement, right? Because if your income is 0, then your rent is 0 and the rest is paid by the subsidizing agency. The maximum income limits would still apply, and those are a little bit different. So if it's a one person, if you're moving in by yourself and you're applying for one of those units, the most you could be making would be $34,740. If it's 2 people living in the apartment, it would be $39,720. The numbers I'm telling you and the numbers you're seeing on the screen differ a little bit from what you see in front of you if you have the application or if you are looking at the beautiful colored cell sheet that we have. That's because the federal government publishes new income limits every year, and they happen to publish them on April 1st. So we already had these printed, we had everything ready to go. And then literally this morning, we're like, oh shoot, we got to update these with the new numbers, right? So if you're looking at these numbers on any of the printed material and it differs from what I just mentioned, that's why these went up a little bit. So we don't want you to look at that and be like, oh, I'm $200 over this amount, I don't qualify. By all means, submit the application, we'll go through the vetting process, okay? Okay, let's talk about the timeline and sort of the chain of events of how somebody goes from sitting here in this meeting to becoming a resident at St. James. So the application period for St. James is for 60 days, and it started on March 1st. March 31st, excuse me. We started accepting applications on March 31st, and we will accept applications through May 30th. So you can submit them online through, I think, 11:59 p.m. on May 30th. Or if you're doing one in writing, a paper application, it just needs to be postmarked on or before May 30th. So even if we get it June 2nd, we know how the mail can be, right? June 2nd, June 7th, as long as the stamp on it, it's stamped by the post office by May 30th, you'll be in consideration for the lottery. From there, we actually hold the lottery, which is just a randomization of all the applications we've received, and that is scheduled for June 13th. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next section. After the lottery, we will begin the application processing, where we will invite the top lottery applicants in for an interview process, and that's going to begin in July. And then we look forward to welcoming our new residents into their homes in the fall of this year, just in time for Halloween. So that's our timeline. Let's talk about the lottery process briefly. So again, I mentioned, and these dates, we'll keep talking about these dates, March 30th to May 30th, March 31st to May 30th, May 30th, May 30th. If there's one date you're going to drill in your head, get those applications to us by May 30th, right? Applications are available online if you go to our website, which is livestjamesresidences.com. You can also use your cell phone and scan the QR code, which appears on a bunch of our collateral here today, and do it right from your phone. If you prefer to do one in paper, we have them here. You can also request it. You can print it out online from that same website. You can request it via email. Just shoot us an email. We'll send them back to you. You can call us and we will mail you one. You can send us a letter to our corporate offices down in Braintree and we'll send you one. Or you can visit Carolina's office over at 96 Lafayette Street or the North Shore CDC Developers Office at 106 Lafayette Street and pick one up. So we are giving you lots of ways to get an application and get into this lottery. If any of those don't work for you, reach out to us. We'll figure something out. We'll figure it out together. When you submit the application online, that's preferred. You will almost immediately receive an email back confirming that your application has been received. So that's the fastest way to make sure, because I know, I get nervous too when I have to submit things. Did they get it? Did they get it? Did they get it? Getting that sort of instantaneous feedback of, yep, it's been submitted, sort of scratches that itch. Some important takeaways when you are filling out your applications, please don't leave any blanks. When you submit it online, there's going to be required fields. You won't be able to proceed unless you fill them out. When you do it on paper, it's going to all look required because we can't exactly tell you. So please don't leave any blanks. If you're unsure of how to answer something, or if you're not sure what we're asking, please reach out to us. Our phone number is 781-952-8201. Let's see if it can, again, it's 781-952-8201. We are happy to explain it and help you navigate that process. We realize it can be challenging or we're asking a lot of information, so let us help you. If your application is received and it's incomplete, you won't be eligible to be entered into the lottery. So if you are doing a paper application, the key is please don't leave any blanks. We do want to make sure that all eligible applicants get entered into the lottery. If that happens, you will have the opportunity to appeal. All right. We are not in the business of saying no to people. We want to house people. So every step of the way, if something happens that says, oh, you're not eligible, you will have the ability to appeal and talk to us about it. And then all lottery and application numbers and communications will be via email or snail mail, regular mail, if you, based on what your preference is. So a lottery, like I mentioned, is just a randomization of the applications that we've received. So when you submit an application, your application is assigned an application number, and that's for privacy reasons. We don't want to publish people's names, anything like that on any website. So every application gets a number, and the lottery is It's literally, we're all gonna log on to a Zoom, we're gonna click a button and it's gonna sort things randomly. And it's going to tell us this application number is number 1 that came out of this lottery. After the lottery, you'll get an email or a letter with your lottery number. It's going to say, you know, here's where you came out in our lottery. And the lottery list will also be published on our website. And then we have to go through what's called the post-lottery sort. There's a lot of steps, right? We have to go through a post-lottery sort. So we have to look at all of the applications that we've received. And then we have to slot all of the applications into the appropriate income limits that we talked about based on what you tell us, right? And then we have to look at any preferences that may apply and determine the final placement on the lottery waiting list. The key to the lottery is you don't have to be logged in to be eligible. So you don't have to log in and watch us click buttons and randomize the applications, okay? As long as you have your application and it's been accepted, you will be entered into the lottery. Okay, let's go over the interview process and eligibility requirements, which goes back to sort of what counts as income and assets. So the basics, right? We have to go through the process. We have to go through the application process, the lottery process, and then an interview process. For St. James specifically, that's the property we're here talking about today. There is a requirement that the head of household or the spouse be 62 or older. That's the age restriction I mentioned at the onset of our time together. And then as we review your application, there's 3 key components. We're going to look at credit, criminal, and rental history. We're going to review the household's total gross annual income and assets. And then we're going to review student status. Because this is a federal program, there are certain restrictions around who can and cannot live at the property based on their student status, whether they're part-time, they're full-time, whether they meet an exception, all these rules that we have to remember. You just have to tell us if you're a student. Okay, so I mentioned that the lottery is going to be held in June. Within 14 days of the lottery, we are going to start sending out what we call invitations to interview to the applicants who landed at the top of our waiting list. So we're going to send out the invitations to interview. When you receive that, you call us up and you schedule a time to come in and meet with us for your intake interview. Bring with you all adult household members and specific documentation that we are looking for. So when I say specific documentation, we don't need it right now. Wait until you receive the invitation for the interview. We will attach to it. Please bring with you copies of bank statement, pay stubs, your most recent Social Security benefits letter, things like that. We're going to provide you all the information that you need so that you can come prepared. And then when you schedule the interview, we will again give you that list, right? We want you armed with all the information so that you know coming in that you have everything that we need. We're going to work together on this, right? If you're unable to attend the interview, we just ask that you call us ahead of time and let us know. So you scheduled it and then something came up, you can't make it, please call us 24 hours in advance. That's so that we know that you're still interested. Because if you simply fail to appear, we assume you're no longer interested, right? We think that's a voluntary withdrawal. You made an appointment, you're no longer interested, you decided not to come, in which case we'll remove you from the waiting list. In cases of medical emergency, or again, you can appeal that should it happen, things come up, right? You would just communicate with us. But we do ask for a little bit of advance notice just so that we know, and we know that not to take you off the list if you're still interested, you just can't make it at that time. So the interview process, all applicants ages 18 and older are subject to a credit and criminal background check, including lifetime sex offender registration screening. And we will be screening for rental history or personal references as well, depending on your individual situation. All income and assets will be independently verified. What we try to do is we try to first say to the bank, you know, is it true this person has a bank account here, right? And if the bank is unable or unwilling to provide that information, then what we'll do is we will ask for those bank statements that you brought to your interview. We'll rely on those instead. Once we have all of those documents back from the various sources, or we've reviewed the information you provided, we will calculate your annual gross income and then sort of see where you fall within those income slots that we talked about a little while ago. If for some reason you are deemed ineligible, let's say you are over income, we will send you, we call it a denial letter, because we have to call it something, explaining the reasons why. And as with every other step in this process, you will have the opportunity to appeal. Okay. So now we're going to.
Like there is clearly what the income guidelines are. We have said a thing about the value of assets. And it's nowhere on this one.
Megan, the question was, very clearly about the income piece, but nothing about the value of assets, and it is nowhere on those forms. I have an income slide right here. After this is an asset slide. Okay, so let's go through this, and then we'll talk about assets, and then hopefully we'll answer your questions, and if not, we do have questions at the end as well. Okay, all right. Okay, so what counts as income? Somebody said wages are very clear, right? Social Security is very clear. What about other things? So what we count as income is really, it's income from any source. So employment earnings. If you are self-employed, it's the net income from your business. If you're self-employed, you file something called a Schedule C with your tax return. So it's your gross income minus expenses. Your net income is what counts if you're self-employed. Unemployment benefits, Social Security, SSI, SSP, veterans benefits, pensions, annuities, retirements. Self-employment, by the way, does include Uber, Lyft, other gig economy type positions. Income from a business, that's that net income that I talked about, or rental property. If you own a property and you are renting it out, it would be the rental income from that, as well as dividends and interest from assets. Right, so my paltry little savings account is currently earning 0.03% interest, which I think last year was about 6 cents, right? That actually would count as income, but any dividends that you are receiving on your assets would count towards income as well. So when we talk about assets, what an asset is and what's included. So an asset is anything of value that you can convert into cash. Right, so my bank account right now is numbers on a screen, but I can walk into a bank and literally turn it into cash. So that's an easy one, right? Checking accounts, savings account, money market accounts, certificates of deposits. If you receive Social Security benefits on a Direct Express card, the balance on the Direct Express card counts as an asset. Pay apps, Cash App, Apple Pay, or Apple Cash, PayPal, Venmo, those are all assets, along with investments, stocks, bonds, certain retirement accounts, and then real estate. When we talk about real estate, if you own it, what we're looking at is, the value of the real estate less any costs to convert it to cash, right? You're going to have to pay broker fees if there's an outstanding mortgage. So it's not the total value of the asset, it's the net value of the asset that we're looking at.
You show them in the bank, deposited in the bank, so that counts. Yeah.
Good question, Megan. So the question was, what about tips? If you are earning tips through your job, that would count as income. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, for example, like real estate, how does that
Good question, Megan. The question was, if you own real estate, how does that factor into income? So if you own a piece of real estate, we're going to look at the value of the real estate. We're going to subtract out any costs that you would incur to convert it to cash. You are not required to convert it to cash. Subtract out any costs necessary to convert it to cash. And then that amount is what's considered your asset. And what the federal government says is that if you have assets in excess of $5,000, we have to assume a certain interest rate could be earned on that money. And then we apply that interest rate to your assets, and that would count towards your income.
So are we looking at it here?
And
Yes, Megan, so the question was, you take a percentage of that, and if you have $40,000 in income, you would just add that to the income. Yes, that's exactly right, and that's, yes, per year, good question. So the question was per year, and I confirmed, per year, yes. So the process that you're going through in order to move into St. James, you will have to go through on an annual basis to redetermine your eligibility. That is not to say if your income suddenly skyrockets, you can't live at St. James anymore. I don't want anybody to think that that's the case, but it's a procedural thing that we have to do for the federal government where we have to go through a certification process on an annual basis. So yes, we will look at it annually.
Yeah, that's about, you know, with the income, the dividend, wondering, if you all like to take that money and take the value of it.
Good question, Megan. So the question was, if you have something like stocks, investment accounts, you would take the actual income, count it as income, and then also apply a percentage to it. Not exactly. So if you have more than $55,000 in assets, it's going to change to 50,000 at some point in the future. If you have more than $5,000 in assets, what the federal government says is we have to look at the actual interest, dividends, or other income from that asset. And then we also have to take that percentage I referenced with your real estate example, right? You're not earning any actual interest. We have to assume you could be earning this amount. So we're going to take the actual interest and look at this number over here. And then if you have more than $5,000 in assets, we're also going to look at this number that the federal government says you could be earning on all of your assets, and whichever number is higher is the one that gets counted towards your income. Only one of them, yes. Good question. The question, Megan, was only one of them gets counted. Yes, it is not double. So let's talk about the time sensitivity of the documentation through this process. So I mentioned every step of the way, you'll have an opportunity to appeal, an opportunity to talk to us. We want to work through this process together. We are also under some time constraints and eager to fill this beautiful building. So we're going to provide you with the list of documents that we need when we send you an invitation to interview. We're going to provide it to you again when you actually schedule the interview. If we need anything on top of that, we will ask for it during our interview time together, and you will walk away with a letter saying, please bring us these things. And we will ask that you provide them to us within 5 business days. Okay. If you can't accommodate the 5 business days, please just communicate with us, right? We just need that open line of communication. But completely ghosting us and not providing the documents may result in your application being denied. Again, we understand things happen. So if that occurs and you're like, no, wait, I was out of town, I had an emergency, something came up, you have the opportunity to appeal as always. All right, how long will this take? It's very highly individualized. Right? If an applicant comes in and you tell me my only source of income is my Social Security and all I have is the savings account where it gets deposited, it may be a very quick process. If you come in and we have lots of income sources, lots of assets, if you've lived in lots of different counties where we need to perform criminal background checks, it may take longer. I've seen applications go from interview to approved in the matter of 2 business days. I've seen it take 6 weeks and sort of everywhere in between. It really depends on your specific circumstances and how quickly we can get the documentation needed to get you approved. Once you are approved, we will schedule a tentative move-in date. And that is all going to be based on when this building is completed, right? Construction delays happen. We've seen it sort of all over the place. And so we can tentatively schedule a move-in date. It may change based on when the apartments are actually completed, but we will maintain communication with you as that progresses. And if that means we need updated or refreshed information because the documents are time sensitive, we will let you know what we need exactly to make sure that your application is still good so that when the building is done, we can welcome you into your new home. Next slide, Megan. Uh-oh, there we go. Okay, when it comes to apartment selection, we do ask about preferences. I want to be on the first floor. I want to be on the fourth floor. I'd like to be in a corner apartment. I want to be close to the elevator, far from the elevator. We do ask about your preferences during the interview process because we do want to be as accommodating as possible. Preferences can't be guaranteed. I think the one exception to that is if you have a need for a mobility accessible unit or a sensory accessible unit, that is an exception to that. We do have to accommodate that, but preferences like I want to be far away from the elevator, we'll take into consideration, but we just can't promise it. Apartments will be offered in order of lottery placement. So if you came out top of the lottery list, you are very likely to get your preferences accommodated. Whereas if you're sort of further down the list and we have to work through some other applicants first, we might not be able to accommodate the asks as much. When we have model apartments available, sample apartments, we will be offering tours to everybody. So even if you are in the middle of the process and you want to come see it because you want to see an apartment before you move into it, right? You are welcome to come take a look at the model and then you can say, pump the brakes, not for me, or yes, I love it, can't wait to see my apartment. And then when your specific apartment is done and you're approved and we have the lease signing scheduled, we will give you a tour of your apartment prior to the lease signing or the day of your lease signing, again, so you have the opportunity to see your specific home. And at the time of move-in, you will be required to pay a security deposit and your first month's rent. The security deposit, we do offer payment plans on that, though, if that is a barrier to your ability to move in. Yes. At the time of move-in, new residents have to pay a security deposit and first month's rent. We offer security deposit payment plans to try to remove barriers from people being able to move in because moving is expensive. The question, Megan, is that for all units, including those for 30% of their income? Are you referring to the payment plans and the? Yes. Yep, security deposit and first month's rent. Okay, so the last thing, if you go through this lottery process and you don't end up at the top of the waiting list, you don't end up moving into St. James during this lease up this fall, we want to keep you on the waiting list. So when apartments turn over, right, people don't necessarily move into one place and stay there forever. So you will remain on the waiting list for when you do approach the top of it and an apartment is coming available. We just ask that you please make sure to keep us updated with what your contact information is, right? If we have a phone number and an email address and a mailing address that's 3 years old, it might not be the right one anymore. So please, if you move, if you change your phone number, please let us know so that we have the most recent information for you and that we can contact you when you get closer to the top of the waiting list. So with that, we're going to ask, what questions do you have that we maybe didn't answer? Yes.
Is there a laundry on every floor?
Good question. Is there a laundry on every floor? There's a laundry on the first floor, and Jennifer said they're looking at putting a laundry on the third floor, and with the building being elevator accessible, hopefully that will meet everybody's needs. I saw another hand. Yeah. Sure. So as far as So Megan, the question was, as far as the project-based Section 8 units, are those lottery eligible as well? And the question is yes. And Megan, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. You can take yourself off mute, but those are lottery eligible as well.
Yes, that is correct. There are 3 that will not be, but the remaining 5 will be.
3 that are not part of the lottery, 5 on. Megan, the question was, so what's the deal on the 3 that are not part of the lottery? So the 3 that are not part of the lottery are received funding on them called community-based housing funding. And those come through what's called a closed referral from social service agencies directly into the community. So that's why those 3 are reserved. The other 5 project-based Section 8 units are part of the lottery. Megan, the question is, who are social services? So the CBH units are going to come via referral from who, Megan?
They come from a coordinator with the state financing agency, and that coordinator is reaching out to advocacy for people who are at risk of becoming institutionalized, meaning that they need a little extra help, support to live independently. They're people who are in rehabilitation centers or nursing homes that really don't need the full services, but don't have anywhere else to go. So the state will do the outreach and put together recommendations and referrals from the different agencies supporting those folks. And then they do kind of a mini lottery. That'll all happen about 60 days before the building opens. So we'd be looking at, end of July, beginning of August for that.
And if you do represent a social service agency and you're interested, if you have clients or you think you might be interested in taking advantage of these closed referrals, if you have a business card, I would love to take it and try to connect you with the state as my program. Megan, the question was, is there a veteran's preference? There is not a veteran's preference at this property.
They're going to be 1 year, so what do you project for increase every year?
Good question. The question was, the rent amounts that we're talking about are for 1 year. What do we project as rent increases going forward? That's hard to say. And it's always done in combination with the owners and what the owners want to do. We review it on an annual basis, and prior to implementing any rent increases, communicate with the owners that that's what the ask is. I mean, costs of everything are going up. And I think we've had some years where we've had very nominal or no rent increases. And then some years where, it's been 5% or so, but it's hard to say now what the rent increases in fall of 2026 are going to be. Carolina says we try to stay around 3% rent increases. That's the magic number. That's what she said. You raise rent too high and people move out, right? So that, and we're not in that business, right? We like to keep people housed. Yes. Good question. Is the heat gas, electric? I think it's gas heat, but heat's included. So, we're pretty sure it's gas heat. And then as far as ceiling heights, do you happen to know? Jennifer says the ceilings are very tall, probably 10 or 12 feet. 8 feet would be pretty small. Like, I'm about 6 feet tall right now, so 8 feet would be like here. So I probably 12 feet if I had to guess. Yes. Good question. The question was, is it one application for both buildings? Yes, it is. So we're here today talking about St. James. There is a sister building called Hawthorne Hall, also a renovated school right near the Hawthorne Hotel. If you're familiar with Salem, a fantastic location. I was just saying that to Jennifer. It is one application for both properties if you're interested in either property. Mm-hmm. Good question. Yes.
I think I missed it. Is it specifically for Salem residents?
Good question, Megan. The question was, is it specifically for Salem residents? It is not. It is not just for Salem residents. Yes.
Well, pets.
Good question. Do we allow pets? We do allow pets, right, Megan?
That is
It's an
correct.
elderly building.
Yep.
Well, it's an elderly building. HUD requires.
Yep.
Yeah. For an elderly building, HUD requires. Pets. Mhm. We'll talk. For an elderly building, HUD does require us to allow pets. Yes. Yeah. There will be restrictions on the pets, weight limits, number of animals, those sorts of things. Carolina says usually 40 pounds. That's what the limit is. What else? Yes. The question was, is a couple restricted to one bedroom? Megan, is the tenant selection plan written that way?
The tenant selection plan is written to the minimum for a 2-bedroom is 2 persons. The voucher units will likely require a couple to share. But the other ones, I don't believe the tenant selection plan restricts it to being like 1 bedroom for a couple.
Nope, that's okay. I'll repeat it back. So it depends on the type of unit that you're moving into. So the units that have the project-based subsidy, typically the administering agency or the housing authority that holds the subsidy does require a couple, a spouse or similarly related couple to share a bedroom. So for those units, we would expect that. The non-project-based units, we just say it's a minimum of 1 person per bedroom. So 2 people could occupy a 2-bedroom apartment. Now, if you are bringing your own housing choice voucher in, the housing authority that holds your housing choice voucher may have similar requirements if you are in a domestic partnership of sorts, that you share a bedroom, and that we would have to defer to them. Megan, the current imputed rate is still, is it 0.06 or did it go up?
It's 0.4.
0.4, thank you. It does change on an annual basis as published by HUD. So, yes.
So I filled out the application online. And
Yes.
It's pre-populated what size I wanted for an apartment. It said, it automatically filled out a studio or a 1-bedroom. But if I switch it to 1 bedroom, that's all I want.
Yep.
Is that like a detriment if you want one over the other option, like a studio?
Yeah, good question. So the question was, when I filled out the application online, it sort of automatically said that I was eligible for both a studio and a 1-bedroom. I don't want a studio. I only want a 1-bedroom. So I unchecked the studio option. Is that a detriment to my application? Absolutely not. And if anything, if I can be honest, I appreciate that, because if you got to the top of the studio list and you're like, I don't want it, then it's a phone call or an email that didn't need to happen. So I appreciate you unchecking that box.
And if anyone has applied that has not unchecked it and they don't want a studio, feel free to email us. We can go ahead and update your application for you. When you email us, we will need your birth date and social security number so we can look up in the database where you are to get that correction made.
So in case you didn't hear, if you hit submit and your application went in for both the studio and the 1-bedroom, and you are not interested in the studio or not interested in the 1-bedroom, just reach out to us at stjames@peabodyproperties.com and we can make that correction for you. We will just need to get some of your personal information, like your date of birth, so that we make sure that we're accessing the correct record and we're not updating the wrong person's information. But we can make that update for you. What else? Yes.
I have a nice CPA, so every year I get my tax document. Very good. But one form, good, federal 1040, by myself. You'll fill out 2 lines up there, your income. One says, one is non-taxable, because for years I worked for So that's lower. But the other one is higher. For some reason, tax people, it's that lower one. They probably have to use those.
Good question, yes. So one of the attendees asked that when she has her 1040 filled out, there are two different amounts on there. One is her gross income, one is her taxable income.
I guess it's not.
Oh, yours would be, yes, okay, in your instance, it would be non-taxable, yes. We operate on gross income.
That MIA, that's not for me to understand about.
Yeah, good question. So what does AMI stand for? So AMI stands for Area Median Income. And the way it's established, it can be a little bit complicated, to be honest. So what the federal government does is they look at the income from the American Census data. And they say, okay, here's what the income is. Salem is part of the greater Boston metropolitan statistical area, for better or worse. So they look at income for families all the way from New Hampshire, all the way down to Quincy and as far over as like Cambridge, right? And they say, here's the median income where we have half of families making more than this, half of families making less than this. So we have that number. And then they also do this really convoluted calculation where they look at the market rents for that same area. And then they say, based on what these market rents are, here's what somebody would need to earn in order to afford that. And then they say, which of these is higher, right? The ones based on census data and what people are reporting, or the ones based on the income necessary to afford the market rents in the area. And then they go with whichever one is higher. I know, I spent a long time reading into this and it broke my brain. I'm glad I don't have to calculate it. What other questions? Yes.
Do any of it's like the 2-bedroom units have 2 bathrooms or 1 bath, or is it all 1 bath?
Do the 2-bedroom units have 1 bath, 1.5, or 2? They're all 1 bath. What else? Yes.
It is gas, so it's gas.
The stoves are electric, right? Yes. That's what I believe too. The question was, is the cooking gas or electric? And in preparing for this, we said it was electric. I was just looking for confirmation. We're in agreement that they are electric. If that's not the case, we'll certainly let you know. I mean, probably. We're sort of in this world now where there's a big push for everything to be electric, if you've noticed that. What else?
Does anyone on the Zoom want to take themselves off of mute and ask any questions?
Anybody on Zoom? Oh.
Megan, any questions in the chat?
We do not have any questions in the chat at this time. I do invite those that are on Zoom to go ahead and either pop a question in the chat, or if you'd like to take yourself off mute and ask a question, I would appreciate it. We'd be able to help you.
Yes.
Oh, it is even, are they air conditioned?
They are air conditioned. Yeah, the question was, is there air conditioning? The answer is yes.
The windows open.
So do the windows open? Yes, they do open. I think legally they have to. Utilities are included in the rents. The heat and hot water. Electricity too. Heat, hot water, and electricity is included. Cable is not included in the utility cost. Yes. Good question. Is it possible to get a copy of the slide deck, or will it be available online somewhere? Yes, the recording will be available online, and I'm sure we could furnish a copy of the slide deck. It's nothing that's like proprietary or it's secret, right? We invited you here, so. Yes. Is there a sound limitation? I play piano. Only sound limitation will be that dictated by city ordinance. which I think is, it's pretty late at night, because I got some noisy neighbors, let me tell you. And there's some nights where it's like 9 o'clock, and I mean, I can't call the cops yet, so I think it's like 10 or 11 o'clock at night. It's pretty late in Salem. Yes.
Does it just automatically go to all the buildings? It says Fox on the end.
Yes, good question. When you submit the paper application, does it automatically go to both buildings? If you only want to apply for one building, we would just ask that you indicate that on the application. Otherwise, you will be included in both sort of by default. Yeah. Yes. The question was, do you have one of these, meaning a cell sheet for the other building? And I gave a massive hesitation and pulled a little bit of face, and I said yes. Because they're in my office around the corner. So I'm happy to go get them though. I don't know why I didn't bring them. I have to be totally transparent. I think I was just thinking St. James, St. James, St. James, St. James. It has, you know, the information about the income limits will be similar, you know, just the property specifics will be a little bit different, but we do have them available. And please, you are more than welcome to go to our website, also livehawthornelofts.com, livestjamesresidences.com. They're very beautiful websites, beautifully designed, and we'll have all the same information. Yes.
Building 5 separate, so we get better chance of getting in.
Good question. So the question was, can we apply separately for each building? So one application will get you into both lotteries. We have to have separate lotteries, one for St. James and one for Hawthorne Lofts. So if you are interested in applying for both, we will get you into both and you will be entered into both lotteries, which I guess sort of doubles your chance, you know, getting into one of the buildings for sure. That's right. One application will get you into both lotteries.
Katrina, we do have a question in the chat.
We got a question in the chat. Hang on. Yes, Megan.
Are you planning on putting a fence between the two properties, 160 and 162, between the back parking lots?
The question is, are you planning to put a fence between 160 and 162 Federal in the back between parking lots? Jennifer, do you know? At this point, it sounds like that's not planned. It's an interesting thought though, and we'll certainly talk about that with the developers if there's specific concerns on why we would want to put a fence up. It's a good thought.
Yep.
Oh, people from the church parking in that lot.
But there's no church. I mean, it's only like occasional weddings and funerals, you know, that happens all the time. I live across that street. Yeah, it's almost nobody there. The only time you have a concern is when they rent out and parking at holiday. And so that might be the only one.
Yes.
But that's between 160 and 162. To the church and 160. Sorry.
I have a question about. It says in this application, it says in studio space. What does that mean?
Good question. So the other building, Hawthorne Loft, the question was, can you talk more about the studio space for Hawthorne Loft? So Hawthorne Loft's the sister building located near the Hawthorne Hotel is going to have a 5,000 square foot space that is going to have both an auditorium and artist studio pods for working. I don't believe is there going to be a charge to use those? Oh, I'm going to actually ask Daniel to come up. Daniel is the one who's going to be vetting the applicants for that artist preference, and I'm happy to get a break from talking.
Hey, well, my name is Daniel, actually, so I'm the director of the Art Museum. So we're going to be managing that space once the project is complete. And so there'll be 10 micro studios within the auditorium on the main floor, 5 on each side, and those are going to be rented in addition to the apartments. So if an artist gets one of the apartments of the building, then they'll have an additional chance to rent one of those private spaces. We haven't determined what the rent is going to be for the micro studios. They're going to be 90 square feet, but they're going to be very affordable. You know, we're required to make them affordable because this is an affordable house. Yeah, there'll also be like 2 soundproof rooms in the auditorium that are beyond the stage. And then those ones are gonna be available more on, not for one individual, but for anybody who lives in Portland.
Great question. Thank you, then. Thank you, San Diego. Yes. And that is the Hocus Pocus School, right? Listen, if you're living in Salem, you gotta be prepared for October, no matter where you live. The question is, what is the street address of the Hawthorne Loft? It's 13 Hawthorne Boulevard. Correct. Yeah, it's much closer to Salem Commons. What else? Well, this was a very lively group. I appreciate you all coming out today. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. Again, we have applications up here. We invite you to apply online, and we look forward to welcoming you to your new home.
Thank you, everyone.
What's the maximum you can make for a 2-bedroom?
The maximum you can make, it depends, how many people would be living in the apartment? Just one? So the 59,400.
The most you could make.
That's the most you could make for just one person moving in.
What's this 97?
That's if it's 4 people. Mhm. Yep, it's a little bit higher. You want me to write the new number out there for you?
The max I can make without getting kicked out is 69,480.
9,480, and that's not without getting kicked out. That's to be able to move in. Once you're in, you're in.
Hmm.
So you could go from making $69,000 a year to making $80,000 a year, and you'll be.
Oh,
So that's just at the initial move in.
okay.
Okay.
Just get down. You know, as years go on, you get, I have to take Social Security at 70.
Yeah.
I got my dad still living, but I get an inheritance.
Okay.
You know, that's gonna put me well over 100.
Well,
I'll still be working too.
God love ya. But this is what you need to get into the building. What happens from there is totally fine.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, that's all right then. I thought, you know, say, take a reassessment if they want to make too much, you gotta go.
Oh, no. No, that does not. No.
Right.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I mean, what's the point? You move in from- Is this the application? Is this the application? This is for a 2-bedroom?
You can, whatever bedroom size you want to do, you can
Yeah, 'cause
select it on there.
My stuff, I got stuff in storage, so I would need that much.
Yes, it'll help.
At least 700. Safe to say 735, 750 square feet or more.